The teaching is like a raft that carries you to the other shore. The raft is needed, but the raft is not the other shore. Use the raft to cross, but don't hang on to it as your property. Do not become caught in the teaching. You must be able to let it go. Hello, my name is Cody. Welcome to the Unifying Field podcast, where we journey beyond the black and white into the vast spectrum of human experience. Here we explore the great question of why we are here, seeking wisdom in all traditions and unity in our diversity. My mission is to bridge worlds, uniting hearts and minds through conversation, curiosity, and the shared wonder of existence. So take a deep breath in through your nose. Open your mind and join me as we step into the infinite together. I used to run a lot, for both fitness and as a kind of therapy or escape. And my favorite places to run were mountain trails. It is the ultimate test of mental strength. In Little Rock, there's Pinnacle Mountain, which used to be part of my ultra running training grounds. I love Pinnacle Mountain because it has a technical trail with roots and rocks that circles the base of the mountain. It is connected to the start of the 222-mile Ouachita National Hiking Trail, which ends somewhere in Oklahoma. It has two trails that lead to the summit at 1,011 feet above sea level. It's not a tall mountain, but it gets the job done. The West Summit Trail is the more relaxed climb of the two, though it is not necessarily easy, and the East Summit Trail is almost like rock climbing. They both achieve the same goal. One route climbs up through switchbacks and boulder fields and is definitely more beginner-friendly. The other practically climbs boulders all the way to the top and is not for the faint of heart. I enjoy them both for different reasons. The West Trail is more scenic, and the East is more direct. When I'm on the base trail circling the mountain, I can look up and see other possible routes to the top. I can even see false summits from certain positions along the trail. There could easily be an infinite number of ways to get to the top of the mountain, each challenging you in different ways, offering different obstacles, perspectives, and views of the summit. The summit is a metaphor for what we think of as God, the source, enlightenment, or at least what one might aim for with spirituality or religion, outside of bettering oneself. The main paths to the top represents ways to reach God, and each has its own perspective of God. Different paths may even have what are known as false summits, that from below make you think you see the summit, but really are not the true summit. And thus, once you get to the false summit, you must let go of that path to continue to the real summit. But even one who reaches the true summit will realize that the true summit is also not God. One of the most dividing topics in human history is religion. If someone says something that goes against what we believe, the fire of our ego ignites quickly, ready to fight back. I want to challenge the idea that there is one right way to reach God, the infinite, the one, enlightenment, whatever you desire to call it, source, creator, whatever. I want to challenge the idea that God has one face through ideas of perception and perspective. And I want to challenge you to think about how your perspective of the truth closes you off to people who maintain beliefs that challenge your own. I've noticed across centuries and cultures, saints and mystics echo the similar truth. The one can be approached in countless ways. Could these different paths actually be pointing to the same summit? I want to journey through time and wisdom by bringing in some beautiful voices that point us toward this truth, that God has many names and faces, and that there are countless paths that can lead us back to Him. Let's start with the Hindu tradition. Sri Ramakrishna, a saint and devotee of the Divine Mother Kali, once addressed his followers who were bickering over whose path was true. Can we really fathom God's nature? I see people talking about religion constantly, quarreling with one another. Hindus, Muslims, Brahmas, Shaktas, Vaishnavas, Shivas, all quarreling with one another. They haven't the intelligence to understand that he who is called Krishna is also called Shiva in the Prima Shakti, and that it is he, again, who is called Jesus and Allah. There is only one Brahman, and he has 1,000 names. Ramakrishna saw that much of this quarreling was just ego, the old "my God is better than your God" argument. He reminded his devotees instead that many are the names of God, and infinite the forms that lead us to know Him. And whatsoever name or form you desire to call Him, in that very form and name you will see Him. The Hindu scriptures echo the same truth. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, "As men approach me, so do I accept them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me." And from the far more ancient Rig Veda, truth is one. The sages call it by many names. Even Ram Dass's guru, Maharaji, would remind his Western students with the simplest words: many names, many forms, Sab Ek, all one. From there, this current flows beautifully into the Sufi tradition of Islam. The great mystic poet Rumi put it this way: "The lamps are different, but the light is the same. It comes from beyond. If you keep looking at the lamp, you are lost. If you fix your gaze on the light, you are home." Ibn Arabi, another Sufi saint, expanded this truth even further. "My heart has become capable of every form. It is a pasture for gazelles and a convent for Christian monks. I follow the religion of love. Whatever way love's camels take, that is my religion and my faith." Christian mystics, too, have spoken the same language. St. Augustine once reflected, "That which is now called the Christian religion has existed among the ancients, and was not lacking from the beginning of the human race, until Christ came in the flesh, after which the true religion, which already existed, began to be called Christian." And centuries later, Thomas Merton would write simply, "The gate of heaven is everywhere." Buddhism also points to the same truth. The Lotus Sutra tells us, "The Buddhas appear in the world for one great purpose alone, to open the door of Buddha wisdom to all beings. Though their teachings differ, their aim is the same." Thich Nhat Hanh uses the image of a raft to remind us not to confuse the teaching for the truth itself, when he says, "The teaching is like a raft that carries you to the other shore. The raft is needed, but the raft is not the other shore. Use the raft to cross, but don't hang on to it as your property. Do not become caught in the teaching. You must be able to let it go." And the same truth can be found outside the classical religions too. Black Elk, the Lakota holy man, said, "God is everywhere. The Great Spirit is in all things. He is in the air we breathe. The Great Spirit is our Father, but the earth is our mother. She nourishes us. That which we put into the ground, she returns to us." Or in author and philosopher Aldous Huxley's words, "The divine reality is everywhere present. It may be apprehended under an indefinite number of forms and names, for it is infinite." Ram Dass, bringing it back full circle, explained that our spiritual practices, whether names, images, rituals, or even gurus, are not God in themselves, but vehicles to bring us closer. He compared them to a light post, helpful to guide us along the way, but not the destination itself. Once you've found the light, you realize the vehicle is no longer needed. It was never God. It was only pointing the way towards him. But again, it was never him. When we step back, what we see is that across time, across traditions, and across cultures, the same current flows. Whether it's Ramakrishna in India, Rumi in Persia, Augustine in Rome, or Black Elk on the plains of North America, they're all pointing to the same truth, that there is only one, shining through 1,000 names and forms. The pathways may look different, sometimes radically so, but each is a doorway to the same presence. And that's the heartbeat of my podcast, The Unifying Field, to recognize that beneath the differences, beneath the symbols, beneath the words, there is one light, one spirit, one source. But if so many mystics speak of the one in this way, why do we experience such different religions and pathways in practice? Here's where psychology offers some insight. There's an old Indian parable that goes, several blind men argued about what they believed an elephant to be. The first blind man touched its side and said an elephant is smooth and solid as a wall. The second put his hand on the elephant's trunk and said, an elephant is like a giant snake. The third felt the elephant's pointed tusk and said, an elephant is as sharp and deadly as a spear. The fourth touched its leg and said, an elephant is like an extremely large cow. The fifth felt the elephant's giant ear and said, an elephant is like a huge fan or a magic carpet that can fly over mountains and treetops. The sixth blind man gave a tug on the elephant's coarse tail and said, wow, this is nothing more than a coarse rope. The six blind men were brought together, and they commenced arguing about what they knew an elephant to be. The elephant, of course, represents God, and the blind men represented our limited selves trying to grasp something impossible to grasp. So we take what we are given and sift that information through our countless mental filters that skew what we see, and then we call it the God. Then we argue that what we understand God to be is the whole God, when we have only glimpsed a tiny aspect of an extremely blurry and distorted image of Him. I think that each pathway may reveal only a tiny portion of the whole of what we seek. I want to be a little more scientific with this explanation by defining perception and perspective. Perception is the complex process through which individuals organize, identify, and interpret sensory information obtained from the environment, such as visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and tactile stimuli. This process allows people to create meaningful interpretations of their experiences, transforming raw sensory data into recognizable concepts. And perceptions are human constructs. They are ideas created in the mind, based not only on environmental stimuli, but also on context, personal experience, and expectations. This was from an article titled Perception by Mary Keenan on EBSCO.com from 2024. Perception is thus your subjective interpretation of the given information. You are standing on the base trail of the mountain, and you can see the path and what appears to be the summit. What you see has been interpreted through your mind's filters based on environmental stimuli, context, personal experience, and expectations. For example, the customs, culture, shared social beliefs, and life experiences are going to be drastically different than those of an earlier group of people in history who were less technologically advanced and more communal in nature. I hypothesize that given the same basic information about God, given both to you and the communal group, each of you would create a story that makes sense in your perceived world. For example, if the communal group grew crops and hunted to share resources with all of its members, they might create stories to describe God that revolve around this way of life in which they know. Likewise, you going to the grocery store for your food may not be as meaningful, so you might create stories elsewhere. If you were into cars, for example, perhaps it would be stories about mechanics or racing, and so on. Perspective can be the point from which you stand, but it is also something you can shift so that you can relate to others. Remaining fixed in our limited personal perspective that our path is the only way to reach God keeps us divided. Why not delight in the truth of the passion and love that each of us has for their own perspective of God, or whatever you desire to label the infinite? All right, we established how perceptions help us make sense of the divine and how perspectives differ. Next, I want to show you how humans can further relate to the divine by adding faces that fixate on a quality of their nature. But first, let's look at the numerous ways traditional religions interpret God. From the moment that humanity found themselves conscious on earth, we began to ask questions of why we are here. What is the point of all this? What is the meaning of life? Where do we go when we die? Who will I be when I die? Did I exist before I was born into the physical world? Is there a higher power? Will dying mean I will no longer exist, or does something continue on? These are some of the many questions we asked. At various points in history, enlightened beings came to earth to help guide us back to the source. It is almost as if we are instinctively drawn back to where we originated, and then humans have taken those teachings and interpreted them through their personal lenses of perception. Later, these teachings were further interpreted by people who came after them. Christianity alone has splintered into countless traditions, each claiming its own way: Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, and many variations beyond. In Islam, you have the Sunni and Shiite traditions, each with their own understanding of the path to Allah. The pathways of Hinduism are numerous and offer practice through selfless action, discipline, devotion, and even knowledge, while also offering a buffet of gods and goddesses to choose from. If you are more eclectic in your beliefs, like myself, you might pull from many different belief systems, such as those I just mentioned, or even from the pagan pantheon of gods and goddesses. Or maybe you're more scientific in your belief systems. Yes, science can be spiritual too. The ways we can practice our spirituality are endless, and for as many differences there are that I listed, there is so much that connects us. A knowing deep down that says, this is not our home. There is more to life than the physical bodies we inhabit. the idea that we are more spirit than we are these bodies. The idea of God having many faces, in my opinion, makes it easier for us humans to connect with Him. Different forms give us different doorways. They give us ways to pray, to relate, to make contact with the divine in ways that touch our actual lives, our struggles, our joys, and our needs. Think about how the gods and goddesses across traditions often carry qualities we can lean on. The Greek god Asclepius, for example, could be asked for healing. In Hinduism, Mother Kali, with her fierce and terrifying image, helps us cut away the things we need to let go of. Hecate Prosperos, the torchbearer, can be called upon when we feel lost at the crossroads and need help lighting our way. Shiva destroys, Vishnu preserves, Brahma creates, and in all of that, we find ways to partner with God in the flow of life. And this isn't just Hinduism or Greece. Nearly every culture has seen the divine wearing many faces. The Norse pantheon had gods for war, wisdom, and fertility. In Buddhism, Avalokiteshvara takes different forms depending on what the devotee needs most. In ancient Egypt, Isis gathered up so many roles that she became kind of a universal mother figure. Different traditions even have different strategies. Some use forms, gods, stories, symbols as stepping stones towards God. Others, like Zen, skip the stepping stones altogether and say, let's just go straight to the source. Both approaches are valid. Some people need the stories, some don't. But the point is, they all lead to the same place. What quantifies what I'm claiming as possible truth? While truth is ultimately subjective, which I absolutely respect, I want to create another story to further explain how embracing other philosophies can not only bring people together from different belief systems, I want to also show how it can actually boost your own understanding and expression of your belief system. This time I'm going to use the subject of mathematics. In the U.S., in kindergarten and below, a child will gain a basic familiarity with numbers. They will start memorizing 1 through 10, for example, and practice counting their fingers, toys, food, etc. Then they'll start learning to read and write these numbers. From first to second grade, they begin learning to do basic math functions, such as addition and subtraction, and multiplication and division. In grades 3 through 5, children learn to work with fractions, decimals, percentages, and how to apply what they learn to solve word problems. In grades 6 through 8, children begin learning about algebra, graphing, statistics, and probabilities. And finally, from grades 9 through 12, students learn more advanced algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and even calculus. If you just learn the basics of numbers, you might have a hard time making it in the world. Sure, you can count, but it would be much better to be able to add and subtract at a minimum. Each of these math classes built upon the previous, and some offered alternative methods to solve problems. In the case of where word problems were introduced in grades 3 through 5, students began learning how math can be translated into real-world problem solving. This is relevant with religion and spirituality. When you start working your way up to trigonometry, pre-calculus, and calculus, you now acquire the tools to begin working more complicated problems in physics. Each one of these classes makes you more capable of solving math-related problems. In a very simple example, you could add 10 plus 10 plus 10, and so on until you reach the sum of 10 tens, or you can multiply 10 times 10 to get the same answer. Yes, you will get the same answer with either method, but one way is a little bit better. But if you didn't step beyond addition and subtraction, you wouldn't know that there is a framework that approaches the problem more efficiently. In my own journey, I have found other traditions help fill in my gaps of understanding. For example, if you have a teaching and are unsure of how to implement that into your life, the odds are high that another belief system has tackled this teaching in a way that will make more sense to you. But if you create walls because your way is the only way, you miss out on the opportunity to grow spiritually and become a better whatever, Christian, Jew, witch, Hindu, whatever. Each belief system is like a type of math system, as I discussed. They are like mathematical formulas we can use to approach and grow our understanding of the infinite. So then what qualifies me to talk about the possibility of there being many paths to God? My road to God has made many detours throughout my life. When times are hard, it's easy to pursue God. But then we forget when times are good, and you live and don't maintain your spiritual health. My experience is a back and forth tug of war with the pull of the illusion of the physical world and the pull of my love for God. My spiritual journey really started back in 2014 by attending a non-denominational Christian church each Sunday. I did that for a while until I began having health problems, and the preacher spending an entire sermon telling us who God wanted us to vote for. It was there that I called bullshit. But really, one thing I found as a Christian was powerful words in a sermon, but I would leave with no tools to help me live in the way that they preached. The preacher might say, all you need is the power of the blood of Jesus Christ, and everyone is pumped and applauds. That is great and all, but how do I implement that into my life? How do I better handle my anger, my depression? How do I learn to love my neighbor? Heck, I didn't even love myself back then. In fact, I hated myself. In my Christian days, I learned more about problem suppression than resolution. Then I started meditating and studying various metaphysical books. I would work these programs for a while and then stop and live out my drama for a while, getting high in meditation and then going out in the real world and crashing and burning over and over again. But I was learning to regain a little control by bringing my mind into the stillness before thought. I was learning how to uproot blocks and fixations that were working against me. I would learn about Buddhism, which I like to think of as a very practical religion. In the most basic sense, Buddhism teaches you to be still. In that stillness of mind, through meditation, you begin to achieve calmness. It is hard to gain control over something that is driving the car, like anger and depression. Stop the car, and then move to the driver's seat. The anger is still there, but it's in the passenger seat now, at least more often than it was before. I had a lot of anger and hatred in my heart after some tough life experiences, so I decided to focus on learning what love means. So for a few years, I primarily meditated on love, specifically the idea of unconditional love, that which the infinite is said to be comprised of. That was my pathway. Eventually, I found Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and fell in love. I had never found anyone else who loved God as much as I did at the time. I enrolled in the self-realization fellowship pathway of Kriya Yoga and really developed that love and devotion to God. Later, I crossed paths with Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now, but wasn't too sure of him. That book hung out on my bookshelf until I was ready for it. But one day, I decided to listen to his lectures, and this time I was intrigued by Ram Dass and his guru, Maharaji's words. I would spend a lot of time learning the Hanuman Chalisa, singing Hindu kirtan with Krishna Das, mantras like Hare Krishna, Sri Ram Jai Ram, Hey Ma Durga, and others. I spent a lot of time tuning into God through the Hindu deities and avatars such as Hanuman, Ram, Kali, Krishna, and so on. The Hanuman Chalisa is still my favorite. Jai 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 Hanuman. Reciting mantras on a beaded mala helped me learn to stay fixated on God throughout the day, which is surprisingly hard, by the way. The more I worked on myself, the more there was a fire growing within me that urged me to do something for other people, but I didn't know what to do. One day I read the book, No Greater Love, by Mother Teresa. In that book, she talked about finding someone dying in a ditch in Calcutta, India. They took that person back to their home for the dying and the destitute, bathed them, loved them, and enabled them to die with dignity. Additionally, Ram Dass and his friend Stephen Levine inspired me with their work with the dying at the dying center, which was a kind of like a hospice where people who are dying can go to wake up spiritually. Ram Dass said, I'm one of those unusual types who delights in being in the presence of someone who is dying, because I know I'm going to be in the presence of truth. And I wanted to be in the presence of truth too. My spiritual path then became volunteering each week to provide companionship to our hospice patients, present veteran honors to those who serve, and sit with people who are actively dying and who don't have anyone through the No One Dies Alone program. This pathway I was on was to understand my own mortality, meditating on my own death in the charnel ground meditations, and to understand the truth that Ram Dass talked about. I attempted to go back to church regularly. My family and I found several churches that were great. I love the Episcopal Church for its inclusivity. I love the Pentecostal Church for its fire and passion, which is similar to why I love Christian music. Each of the churches we tried, I enjoyed for different reasons. But you can't go back to sleep once you've woken up, and it was never enough just to be like a normal Christian. Unlike anger, which could be suppressed for a long time, my spiritual thirst was growing too quickly to be suppressed at all. When my marriage was falling apart, I decided to check out what I would previously label the dark side. I read books by the alleged most evil man to walk the earth, Aleister Crowley, and like others I have heard, I found him to be quite poetic in the things that he had to say. I read The Seven Spheres by Rufus Opus and practiced planetary magic because I wanted to know if it was real. Yes, the results I received confirmed it. I studied Hermeticism and learned about the Egyptian Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus. I studied ceremonial magic, paganism, witchcraft, even Satanism, ideas that I might cringe at before because that was evil. It was actually quite poetic. From the Liber Zodi vel Hamas Hermeticus, Crowley said, "My adepts stand upright, their head above the heavens, their feet below the hells. But since one is naturally attracted to the angel, another to the demon, let the first strengthen the lower link, the last attach more firmly to the higher." I was fascinated in both the diversity and the unity I found through any belief system I studied. Today, my practice is daily meditation and working with the goddess Hecate through ceremonial magic. Spiritually, I couldn't be happier. I still love Jesus, Hanuman, the Buddha, and so on. I guess I'm more of a hands-on practitioner with my spirituality. For the longest time, I was trying to become holy, as Ram Dass would say, and would suppress anything that seemed dark. Life sucked. I wanted to stay high all the time, never really understanding how to fix the shit parts of myself that were holding me down. I was doing something known as spiritual bypassing, which means the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. I have always been a hands-on person, and praying for things to be changed is okay, but a part of me just knew that you have to put in work to make change happen. That's what I love about meditation. Meditation is actively doing something, even if you don't know what else to do. My beliefs really haven't changed a lot, outside of gaining an appreciation for the darker belief systems. That enables me to relate to and appreciate other people's perspectives more, which breaks down that barrier of division. There was even an episode of Smosh-alike, which I watched when learning about Satanism. Why would I look into Satanism? Why not? You don't have to worship the Dark Lord to try and understand what they stand for. I recognized Richard Lale in the video thumbnail, and that name I knew from Ghost Adventures. He summarized the 7 tenets of Satanism as, "Don't be an asshole." I share that belief. I would be willing to bet that most people would agree with the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. Today, I can relate to many belief systems. More importantly, I can relate to the people of many belief systems. I am not bound by a god or dogma. I am free to explore as I wish. Every day I meditate and work with the goddess Hecate. Some days I blast Christian music and sing my lungs out. Other days you might find me at a Buddhist meditation retreat or Sunday service. Even in thinking about this episode, I was inspired to sing passionately along with Krishna Das to the Hanuman Chalisa. I am a student of God, and I find him everywhere. Behind every philosophy is the one standing with open arms and true unconditional love for his children, not the human idea of unconditional love, the real version. Yes, even in Satanism, I see God, as they are of the few that at least somewhat embody the term unconditional. After all, he who knows not that the Prince of Darkness is but the other face of the King of Light knows not me. That was a quote by G. Manley. All of the belief systems are mathematical formulas that offer something a little different and fulfill their role of helping us through the struggles of life, as well as this journey of the mountain to the infinite. No matter where you stand on the base trail of the mountain, when seeing God as the peak, you hold a unique perception of the infinite, shaped by your own life experiences. As many mystics have written, God wears many faces and offers many paths to draw us closer. At first, our differences may seem to divide us, but when we pause and look to our left and right, we notice that we are all climbing the same mountain toward the same source. So I'll leave you with these questions. How might holding too tightly to the safety of your own beliefs keep you separated from others who see the summit differently? What could you practice that might make you a better person in your faith? And might another tradition or perspective help you bridge that gap, drawing you even nearer to the infinite? After all, the trails themselves are not God. They are like formulas, maps, vehicles, and guides, tools to help us scale the boulders along our path, so that step by step we ascend toward the summit. Thank you for joining me on this journey today with the Unifying Field podcast. We've touched on just a fraction of the vastness that connects us all, but remember, the exploration never ends. Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and stay curious. As we part ways, may you carry a little more wonder, a little more peace, and a renewed sense of connection with the world around you. Until next time, take a deep breath, question everything, and remember, the infinite is always within reach. Please like and subscribe, and share with anyone you think might enjoy this type of content.